All right, we're back here again on the Work in Progress podcast. We are here today with Jamal Hampton of Sentinel Inspections. How you doing today?
I'm awesome. How you doing, brother?
Good. Glad to have you here today. So first of all, we want to kind of go through your origin story to talk about how you got into home inspection. So take us to your humble beginnings.
So after I graduated college, I had a family friend, was actually like my aunt's ex-husband. He owned a home inspection company.
Okay.
So I didn't really have much direction after college. So when I came down, I started with him. I fell in love with it. So I worked with him for maybe 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it was, I made the decision to start my own company.
Okay.
So that was the start. And yeah, that's we're here now.
Was there any specific like licensing or courses that you had to take before you got licensed?
Absolutely. So, when I first started, I started as like a environmental hygienist, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a mold remediator. I was asbestos abater, and I also did like radon testing as well.
Okay.
So I mastered those. And as I was doing, I was shadowing on home inspection. So I was checking outlets, doors, and windows, and kind of I guess the smaller portions of the home inspection, like opening doors and windows and things like that. As time went on, I learned about the major systems like the water heater, furnace, and the big ticket items. So as I learned about that, I became licensed. And once you get licensed, you have to have a certain amount of inspection under you. But by that point, I had already done thousands of inspections because I was shadowing. Okay. So by the time I was licensed, I was overly qualified. So it was easy for me to master the test.
Mm-hmm.
So once I did that, that was that was pretty much the start of it.
What's the minimum of inspections that you had to have before?
It was a few hundred.
Okay.
It wasn't much. I think for Virginia it was maybe 50 to 75 or something.
Okay.
But
so
like
every state is obviously different.
Yeah, every state is different. But it's just it was just being there. Like I said, that's what kind of molded me, kind of just being around it for so long. I was kind of, like I said, I was ready. I was ready by the time I was starting my company.
From the outside looking in, it seems like being a home inspector, it takes a lot because you have to know about HVAC, electrical, plumbing, mold remediation, all this stuff. So how long does it actually take to like learn all the different aspects of a home to be an actual home inspector?
So it just depends. When I came in, I had no construction background at all. So it honestly took me about two years or so to really get really comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, if you really dig in and just read and really, really dive into the craft, you could probably master in about a year or so, or get licensed in a year or so. It probably takes a few more years to master it. But I think that was, it really depends on a person. Okay. It's a lot of reading.
A lot of reading.
It's a lot of reading. And once you read it, you still don't completely master it until you could see it in person.
Experience it.
Yep. Yeah. So me being out there in the field plus me reading, I think that's what catapulted me to the next level.
Okay.
And does it require you to be certified on a regular basis, like every 2 years, 5 years or something?
Yeah. So not really. So you have to pay to kind of renew your license.
Okay.
But you don't have to take the test. So normally with the biggest barrier to entry,
continuing education courses or something like that.
Yeah, for Virginia, it requires every 2 years to have continuing education, but Maryland doesn't, and DC doesn't even have a home inspection license requirement.
Really?
So that's really crazy. But I think that was I think that was the biggest.
So if somebody wanted to say I'm starting my own home inspection company in DC, there's no like they can just basically say, hey, I'm a home inspector.
Yeah.
And not have to have any type of credentials.
Right. Yep. That's
Really?
Exactly right. And so unless it's a government like assistance program, they require some type of licensing.
Okay.
So normally I use my Maryland license as, to show that I'm qualified to be there. But typically, no. DC doesn't require you to have a license. And that's crazy because DC normally has the older homes when they, when you think about it. So older homes normally normally in worse shape, typically.
Right.
So
maybe
all that.
Yeah.
So if you're not knowledgeable about those things, you're doing yourself a huge disservice of, just going with someone that may not be completely qualified.
Do you recall your first home inspection by yourself?
It was honestly, man. I remember like it was yesterday, man. It was a very scary experience.
Okay.
Because what happened is, I think the owner of the company that I was working for, he knew that I was ready before I knew.
Okay.
Because I was shadowing so much, but I was doing basically the whole inspection while he was there because he was just kind of walking around like, oh yeah, that's good.
grading you.
But I was already doing everything. So one day he told me to go to a house. I'll show up. I was doing the inspection, and he was like, "How's it going?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm almost done. I'm doing my thing." He's like, "Oh, I'm not coming." I was like, "Oh man," So I was like, "I gotta explain. I gotta give him the dissertation and everything."
Yeah.
He's like, "You got it," and I did, man. And I grew confidence from there, and that was a
But
wrap.
it turned out fine. No,
Absolutely.
He wasn't like, hey, I think you missed this, anything like that.
No, man, because I always I took pride in what I was doing, but I also liked it.
Okay.
So I like the discovery. I like the trying to find different things. I never go on an inspection to find stuff, but I just always go through the progression of just going look at the HVAC, see everything that should be there,
Right.
everything that's not. Like, okay, so this is what's missing and things like that. Most of inspectors, I think, go in to find specific things, and I think that's when you miss things. When you just go through the progress,
Okay.
that's how you can make sure you cover all angles.
Okay. So
I think
you generally do come in kind of with a standard game plan, even though every house is different. You say, I know I need to look at this, I need to look at that, You're not necessarily saying I need to look at the foundation and really focus, because you say you might miss something else that's important.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that changed now from then is when I first started I had a big camera, that had crazy zoom, and I could take pictures of everything. Then I go home and I input them into a report. So that wasn't the most effective. So now when I do reports, I do reports as I'm going. So I have a large checklist that I have to check off each box.
Okay.
So it's almost impossible for me to miss if I check off everything. So I think that's been extremely helpful with us not missing things.
Got it. So take us like on when you get to a property, kind of take us on a tour on how you go about inspecting. What are most of the systems you're looking at when you're inspecting the home?
So normally I start outside. So when I pull up to the property, I take a look at the house, the front, side, back, and then, the other side. I walk around normally clockwise every time. Because, when I'm ever like at home, like trying to think about things I saw, it has to be done the same way because I'll remember it in order.
Muscle memory.
Yeah, muscle memory. Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll start outside, look at the grading foundation, because the main thing with homes and kind of keeping up with your house is make sure water flows away from your foundation, because normally water is the most destructive force when it comes to your foundation of your home, and normally your foundation is the most expensive item when it comes to your house. So I'll look at that. I'll look at the HVAC system outside. I'll look at the electrical meter outside. We'll look at the roof covering to make sure it's in good shape. Once we check off everything outside, the grading and landscaping, we'll go inside. And I normally go to the areas furthest from the kitchen. If there's a basement,
get on the roof yourself, or
yeah. So if we can, we'll get on the roof. But now our insurance doesn't cover us to walk roofs. So if I were to walk a roof and fall, it'll be all on me.
Okay.
So now I use drones.
Yeah. Okay.
So if I can walk it, I will. But if not, like a tall townhouse, I'll just put the drone up there.
Okay.
Because normally the inspection is non-invasive. So even if we walk the roof, we can't take anything apart to kind of see what's going on. So if I see a troubling area, then I'll recommend a qualified roofer to evaluate further. So normally a drone can do the job, you know what I mean? And then I'll go inside the attic to see if there's any leaks. So I can do a little further investigation.
Okay.
But when I come inside, like I said, I'll go to the basement or utility area where the major systems are, like the water heater, the furnace, the electrical panel, because normally those are highest ticket items. So I always try to spend the most time at like I said, the areas that could cause the client the most money.
Okay.
Normally the basement, like with water and mold and things of that nature, I always try to make sure we cover all our bases there. And then we'll go to like the kitchen or the bathrooms, the living areas, because normally when it comes to defects, those are minuscule compared to the higher ticket items.
Right.
So that's why I normally start. I normally start utility room.
Okay. So when you're looking at, we're going back outside a little bit. When you're looking at the foundation, what are you mainly looking for? Because in myself learning, when I bought a home, being educated on what to look for, they talk about like foundation cracks and things to look for. And some people say, hey, you got maybe small little cracks. It's not a big deal. It's just a house natural settling. But then you have what they call a stair step crack. Go talk about how a home is basically has something like that happen, where you see like the stair step, the stair step crack.
So they're all different types of cracks, but so the first one, the most common one that we see is just a vertical crack.
Okay, that's the most common.
Yep. So that's caused from differential settlement.
Okay.
So the house settles normally, but when it settles at different rates, then that's what causes a split. And normally, what causes the house to settle at different rates is if one side of the house is the soil is more saturated under one side than the other, so it's going to sink harder.
Oh, okay.
The step cracks that you're talking about, normally I see those in like older homes. If I see like, if it follows like the mortar roll or if it's a brick home, that's because of it's what's called a lintel around your doors and windows, and over time it's a metal beam. As that metal beam rusts and deteriorates, the weight of the bricks begin to sag. So normally that's a lintel defect, not necessarily a foundation issue, but it's just the support for the opening is giving way, and that's causing some settlement there.
And from the effects of that, what are you able to notice anything inside of the home? Any effects, visual effects?
Like cracks in the wall or something like that?
Sometimes. If it's extreme, absolutely.
Okay.
So with a bad case, we will see cracks inside. But with an older home, normally you won't see as much movement. But normally cracks when they're wider than a quarter inch, like you're wider than your cell phone, that's when it's a major issue, and that's when you'll start seeing cracks inside the house.
So when you see something like that and you tell the customer, hey, I see a major defect in this household, do they typically ask for, hey, how much would this cost? And can you provide that? Like, hey, this might cost you, $20,000 to fix. Is that under your scope?
Yeah, so we can give ranges.
Okay.
So we try not to be alarmists. And one thing that helps us not alarm or scare our clients is our knowledge base of if the price is going to be a small price or large price. Like we can say like, oh, this is a major concern, but it could be $100 a fix, or this could be a major concern. It could be 20,000.
Okay.
So normally smaller cracks are around, a few $100 and they can seal on the outside normally. But if you have a large crack, normally, your foundation wall is pretty thick. So if you see a crack on the outside, that means it cracked all the way through. So they would have to do like an injection inside to fill it from the inside out to make sure it doesn't reopen.
Even for a small crack?
Well, no, a wider crack.
Oh, with a wider crack.
A smaller crack you can normally seal on the outside.
Okay, but something that's, what was the size again?
Like a quarter inch, like wider than your
okay.
cell phone. Like that's a good base. If you could put your whole finger in a crack, that's probably not that's not a good thing.
Okay.
The other cracks we see are horizontal cracks. Those are probably the worst. If you go in the basement, you see like a horizontal, like
Straight
on
across.
the hole across the wall. That's due to like the soil, like the freeze and thaw cycle. Okay. So when the soil is saturated and it freezes, it expands, and when it expands, it pushes pressure against the foundational wall.
Okay.
Hydrostatic pressure. But that's just due to moisture in the soil. So that's the worst type of crack, because that's like it's a lot of pressure pushing up against the house, and normally that takes a lot to kind of stop it. So they'll use strapping and things like that. But normally those are the cracks that we don't like to see, the horizontal ones.
So while you're doing all this, do you recommend the client being with you or standing to the side?
With me,
With
for
you?
sure.
Okay.
So I don't mind, like, after the inspection, we could discuss everything that we put in the inspection report. But if they're there, it makes that process a little easier for them to understand.
Right.
Like,
Softer blow.
Yeah. Like I'm reading this now. I see the pictures. Oh, I remember he said it. Or if they just see the picture for the first time, like, wait, I didn't see this. Let me call him. Where'd this come from? You know what I mean? So it just helps everyone be on the same page. And most times, the real estate transactions are extremely time sensitive.
Right.
So most times they don't have time to kind of go back and forth about things. You want everything to be kind of done at the time of the inspection. I know exactly what's going on. I'm gonna make an informed decision. You know what I mean?
Okay. And we're coming with that. So let's say you get an inspection back and it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And are you allowed to? You're only allowed to basically tell the client, "Hey, this is what's happening," but I'm not. You're not. I'm assuming you're not allowed to tell them, "Hey, I wouldn't buy this house," or anything like that.
So I could just give them the facts.
Okay.
I just try to give them the facts. No bias at all. Because we don't work for the seller or the seller's agent. The seller's agent or the buyer's agent.
Okay.
We represent the client, the potential buyer. It's illegal for us to tell someone to get a house or not, but I just try to paint the picture as vividly as possible to allow them to make the best decision as possible.
Okay.
So I know during the pandemic, there was a lot of people buying houses because the interest rates were low. And I did also see a lot of people buying houses without inspections.
Yeah. So
I guess overall, was the pandemic a positive or negative from a business perspective for you?
Business wise, it wasn't the best. So when the market is extremely high and houses are just flying off the shelf, that's it's great for real estate agents, but it's not as good for home inspectors because when it's that much when it's a frenzy like that, you don't have much wiggle room as to negotiate. Like most people are waiving inspection contingencies just to get the deal closed.
Right.
And a lot of times it's okay if you're a savvy home buyer and you've bought a few houses, you kind of know how things work. But as a first time home buyer,
investor maybe
I think that wasn't great for everyone. And I've recently did an inspection for someone that didn't do an inspection, and they had a house for a year, and I found significant issues. And that's probably the toughest conversation to have because they didn't even know.
Right, and they already own it,
and they own it.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do? You can't just sell it.
Yeah.
Well, you could. I guess you could hide it and sell it, but if you like your house, you want to keep it. Right. You know what I mean? It's just that just not having that knowledge is extremely critical because the investment is most people's largest investment they make in their life, but it could be the best investment they make or the worst.
The worst. Okay.
So it's extremely. I feel bad for people that were in a situation that they had to move, and the only way they can get in is to not get an inspection. You know what I mean?
What about new homes? So somebody bought a home that was just built, and they said, "I don't need an inspection. It was just built,
brand new."
Have you ever ran into issues with new homes?
Yeah. They're not as bad as older homes. We find smaller things. Well, with every home inspection I've done, I find deficiencies.
Okay.
New construction are normally not as bad because the builder has warranties and things and measures set up to make sure that it's not horrible, or if it is, they can fix it. But I think that's new construction. I still recommend inspections, but normally they're not as bad. Like I don't see $20,000 to $30,000 repair jobs at new construction. You know what I mean? Normally I find maybe a few thousand, maybe they forgot to install something or they installed something right, or over time it's just kind of failing, things like that.
Is there a particular builder that when you say, "Oh man, it's this builder again"? All right, here, we know he's gonna mess up the baseboards.
Well, all builders, most builders are not always on the site. So you normally have the subcontractors doing jobs. So all builders kind of have issues from here and there. That's why we recommend inspections. But for me, it's the boutique builders. So even more than Ryan or Caruso or the big ones out here, it's the ones that only do 3 or 4 houses. And, those are the ones that, I worry about the most because they're not as used to all the protective measures that are required to kind of make sure the house is passing inspection and things
what are some of the most common things you see in new construction homes that are a problem?
So I do so we do the pre-drywall inspections and we do the final drywall inspections.
Okay.
And the pre-drywall inspection is probably where I find the most deficiencies.
Yeah.
And that's
when the house is naked.
When it's naked. Yeah, so you can see the studs, the frame, you can see everything. Right. Once you drywall it, you don't see much.
They can hide it.
They can hide it. So a lot of times, really, I'll say last year, actually 2 years ago, the biggest thing I was seeing was a lot of mold on studs. And that was because we had a really wet year, and a lot of builders leave their building materials on the ground or in the dirt before they put it up. So if they leave it down without it sufficiently drying and put it up, mold will begin to grow. So we're seeing a lot of that. A few years ago, I'll say last year, I was just saying a lot of things, just a lot of studs not supported properly, missing bolts here and there. Just overall, the workmanship, it was just small things, but it's just things that over time, when your house begins to settle, man, it's selling really hard this way. It could be something not supported properly, like a stud, or, maybe your stair framing is missing some nails or bolts here and there, and it's selling harder than it should. So it's just really securing, the finishes,
Do you think that, there's a saying that, they don't make certain stuff the way they used to.
Yeah.
Do you feel like some homes are the same way? Maybe the craftsmanship is not as good as it used to be, or is it good here and then maybe over here it's not good, or is it across the board?
Well, so the building materials definitely changed. Okay. The older building materials were better. They were stronger. They last a little longer. Today, the houses that are built with OSB board, which is pretty much wood that shouldn't be exposed to the elements at all. So if it gets wet, it will rot immediately. So I'll say they built homes now for efficiency.
Okay.
So the older homes, they were built, they weren't as tightly built. So it had a lot of air leakage, and so when you're heating your house, you spend a little bit more to heat your house.
Right.
Now they build them extremely tight. So I think the biggest thing is just they went from durable materials to efficient, tightly built homes, I guess, today.
Gotcha.
That's the main thing I noticed.
Have you noticed with the increase of for materials, like a 2x4 used to cost like $3 back in the day, now 2x4 like $5-6. Have you seen builders cut costs or cut I guess their craftsmanship to save money with the materials?
But still fall in line with codes and all of that.
Yeah, not honestly, not much. I mean, I think if anything, they just raise the price of the house.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I think the last year, I think there was a delay on everything. Like definitely 2x4s and in the materials, there was
Garage
delays.
doors.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
it was delays. So I think it was just hard for them to get it.
Mhm.
I don't think they necessarily skimped, but it just took them a while to kind of get the materials that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So going back to, we talked about you inspecting the home from the exterior, and then when you come into the house, you're basically going to the basement first to check all of the main components, like the hot water heater, the HVAC system. So what are you looking for in those systems right there, especially when you're dealing with stuff like gas, hot water heaters? What are some of the signs you're looking for as far as it not operating properly?
First, if it is gas, I look at how it's venting. So as the gas is burning, where is it going? Excuse me. It is like the venting, are the vent pipes rusted? Are they disconnected?
Mm-hmm.
They look like they're in poor shape because carbon monoxide is deadly. It could kill you.
Silent killer.
It's a silent killer.
So tell the folks real quick, just go into detail about what carbon monoxide is.
So it's an odorless, colorless gas, but it's produced from gas not burning properly.
Okay.
So as you're burning, as your water heater is burning gas or your furnace is burning gas, you want that to escape. You want it to get, up and out of the house. But if it's not, that could be called backdrafting. So that's releasing the toxic fumes back inside the house.
Okay.
And I recently saw an article, I believe it was in Mexico or it was somewhere where, a tourist passed.
Oh, it was a resort. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a resort. They passed because the water heater was leaking carbon monoxide.
Yeah, it was a young couple that died inside the resort.
Yeah, and that's unbelievable to me. So every time I go now, I always check those things out. But that's the first thing I look for is just safety. Ultimately, home inspection is about safety, and then it's about making sure that everything's functioning properly and the durability and make sure things last as long as they can. Okay. So I look at safety first, and then I'll look at the actual system itself, like a water heater. Okay. Normally, water heaters corrode from the inside out. So once you see rust and corrosion outside, that means the inside is already corroded. Okay. So that could be an indication of things need to be replaced or or need maintenance. Okay. With your furnace, the same thing. If I see a lot of rust or corrosion, that's the first telltale sign. I always look at the ages of the systems, just because systems can last a lot longer than their typical life expectancy, but normally that gives you a good guide. So if the water heaters, they last about 12 years. If we're at the 15-year mark, even if it looks good, I'm gonna caution my the potential buyer, like it looks good, it's functional now, but in the next few years, I would just game plan, just prepare for eventual replacement.
Okay. And what about HVAC? So I know it seems like HVAC systems have not been lasting as long as they used to. I've had a couple encounters myself. So what's the typical lifespan of an HVAC unit?
So like an electric system can last about 15 years. A gas system lasts about 20 to 25.
Okay.
So the most important thing with your HVAC system is almost servicing like a car. You want to have it serviced. Normally, it should be serviced twice a year.
Twice a year?
Yep, because you have your heating and then you have your cooling.
Okay.
So you want to service both sides of the system to make sure it's functioning properly.
Okay.
Especially for like electric. In this area, we use a lot of electric systems, and it's what's called a reversing valve inside. So when it's on heat, it's one way. When it's cooling, the reversing valve turns. Okay. Over time, it can damage, and it may not function properly. Or a lot of times with the electric-based systems, if it's not serviced, it's a condensation line, like a white pipe that comes out the side. If that condensation line ever gets clogged, the water or condensate will back up inside the system. When it backs up inside the system, the water evaporates, and that causes mold growth. So when you have mold growth inside your system, that's distributing air throughout the house. That's not always ideal. So it's really, servicing and maintenance is really what makes your system last long, as long as they should.
So you said twice a year, once maybe in the springtime and then once before the winter time.
Yep. That's what we recommend.
Okay. And then now you're basically moving upstairs, and what are you looking at on like the main floors of the home, the bedrooms, the kitchen? What are you mainly looking for as far as possible deficiencies?
So normally when we start the home inspection, we test all appliances. So we run the washer, a dryer, the dishwashing machine, everything that's there, and we also run the water for 30 to 45 minutes, or really throughout the home inspection. Okay. I'll say even longer sometimes than 45 minutes, just to make sure the pressure's good, make sure there's not any backups, leaks, clog, things of that nature. We check all the outlets.
Basically putting the plumbing system through a stress test.
Yeah. Worst case snenario.
Yeah.
Have it all run at the same time. So when we run at the same time, we don't like to see temperature, the flow decrease.
Okay.
We want everything to still have the same pressure, because if you're all using it at the same time, you want it to work. Right. So that's what we check for that. Like I said, we check the outlets, doors, windows. We pretty much check everything. Okay. All the appliances as well.
So what's some of the tools that you have on you while you're doing this inspection?
Oh man, so I'm known as
Inspector Gadget.
Inspector Gadget.
Oh, man.
They call me Inspector Gadget. So when I first started, I used to have a tool bag, and I never was a big fan of it, because if I'm doing work here and I go somewhere else, I leave the bag, I gotta go to get it and things like that. Yeah. So I have a vest now that pretty much has all my tools. So I have all the different screwdrivers, every screwdriver I need. I have a drill. I have a thermal camera, which is like the secret weapon for home inspectors. I have a moisture meter. I have a prong to kind of, if there's something that looks like it's deteriorated, we can kind of pry it to see if it's gonna rot. Okay. I have a tape measure, of course. We have a ladder, a telescoping ladder that we can get in all attic hatches and openings. We have the drone, of course. But those are the main things I use all the time. I have other things in the truck, but that's what I normally carry on me every home inspection.
Never leave without those.
Never leave without those.
Are you a Milwaukee guy or DeWalt? What's your preference?
Milwaukee guy. And I think, honestly, it's not really even the quality of the materials. I think Milwaukee's great, but it was red. And
it goes in,
it went my gear. It's got those
colors. Yeah. Nice. And so, what are you looking at as far as in the attic when you get to the attic space?
So when we open up the attic space, the main thing I'm looking straight up when I go in. So I'm seeing if there's any previous leaks, active leaks, any damage, bats.
Okay.
Things like that. I also look at the insulation levels, make sure the insulation is light and fluffy, and it's covering all the joists. The best attics I see is all insulation. I don't want to see any rafters, any wood exposed, because there's a phenomenon called thermal bypass. So when you're heating your house, energy transfers through wood. So if you cover it with insulation, it won't. So that keeps everything efficient.
Okay. And then is there a specific direction that the insulation should be facing? Because I've seen videos before where, even on new construction, where the insulation was in one direction, and from what I heard, that it's supposed to be a specific direction in order to keep the home heated. If it's in the wrong direction, you're basically losing heat.
Right. So normally when we're on top in the attic, we want to see, top or bottom, we want to see the furry part.
Okay.
We don't ever want to see the paper part like on top or on bottom, because the paper part is a vapor barrier, and that should be towards the heated space. So that should be face down, and you should see the furry on top.
Okay. And have you seen in new construction, that mistake?
Not as much.
Not really.
I think new construction, I'll just see none at all. Like they just forget to do it.
They don't put any in there?
They don't put any in there.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's
bridging.
Backtracking a little, you said bats. So have you encountered bats in people's attics before?
Oh man, I've pretty much seen everything.
Rats,
everything.
Raccoons.
Oh my god! So I saw a possum. I don't know if it was a raccoon. I had a possum. So I was doing a new construction inspection, and I think it crawled off the roof or something. I had my head up, and I heard something moving, and out of nowhere, it ran up to me.
Oh, when you were poking your head through the attic.
And it ran directly
towards you.
And I almost fell off the ladder.
Wow. You need to add a Milwaukee BB gun to your tool belt,
man. It was one of the scariest experiences ever, man. They just laughed me out.
Wow.
But yeah.
Wow. And I remember one time I saw one of your inspections, and you were looking at a sump pump, and there was a large spider down in there. That spider looked like it was that spider looked like it was bigger than my hand. It looked like it was the size of Kawhi Leonard's hand. I was like, golly. And it looked like it had different colors on it.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
More than anything, I think spiders really because I go in a lot of crawl spaces and tight
yeah.
spaces. So spiders really get me because they could be on you for a while and you don't even know.
You don't even know.
Like if a rat or something coming, I can see it coming.
Yeah.
But if a spider's on you, man, like, and we have poison spiders in this area, so
Right.
it's like, I think those are one of my biggest concerns.
So
Yeah.
what about snakes when you're doing crawl spaces? You not worried about those?
Yeah,
Don't worry about it all.
Yeah.
But like normally, I could see evidence if it's been a snake.
Gotcha.
Oh,
I'll see some skin
Skin,
somewhere or something
Yeah.
like, okay, like I might need to be on my P's and Q's here.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't normally encounter too many snakes.
Okay.
That's normally like Brian's Road and areas
Mm-hmm.
like that. I see it.
Have
Okay.
you ever
Well, that's where I live.
refused-
Like White Plains.
Exactly.
White
We see
Plains,
we see brown recluse.
Yeah.
And I had to get his ag one time, man. I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Oh yeah, we was putting them fans and stuff in.
So it actually been an increase in snakes in the area because we
Okay.
had cicadas for a while.
Yeah.
And the cicadas were going crazy, and the mice ate the cicadas, and then the snakes eat the mice.
The mice, yeah.
So that kind of was drawing them in.
Yeah, we've
crazy.
noticed that too. We had is outside we would see what they call rat snakes. They're like gray and black, and the neighbors said they saw them too, like around their doorstep or their garage. So we was like, oh, we got to make sure we safeguard the garage and things now,
Man.
But we're back at the Barnes Road, White
Yeah.
Plains area.
Yeah, you'll see
It's
it.
more rural, so you get a little bit of everything back
Yeah.
there. I mean, when I first
Get a little
moved out
wildlife.
there, I was like, look at the size of this thing,
Yeah, it's scary to death, man.
Yeah.
Have you ever refused to go in a certain part of the house, like say the crawl space? You're like, yeah, there's no way I'm going into there.
So our standards require us to expect everything that we have access to that doesn't put us in harm's way.
Okay.
So if there's like a crawl space that's completely underwater or something like that, I'm not swimming around. Or if I see a ton of droppings as soon as I get in there,
Yeah.
that's a sign that's probably a family of something in there.
Right.
But normally, honestly, I try to get in everything I can.
So when you're going into homes that do have a crawl space, what are you looking for there?
So that's like the basement almost. That's
Okay,
the
so like
most
this.
critical area of the house because normally you'll see all the foundation structural, the structure of the house. You'll see the floor joists.
Okay.
You'll see the foundational wall. You'll be able to see if there's water getting in there. Termites normally, where you can. That's normally you'll find termites, in the crawl space. And like I said, the flooring members are normally one of the most critical points of the house, and
Right.
that's what's holding it up.
Right.
So that's like everything down there.
So talk a little bit about termites now, because I think a lot of people don't really, most people know what termites are, but they don't really think about it when it comes to purchasing a home. And I would say my experience myself was going in, I bought a house, and I noticed out back there was some like broken up wood and stuff. And I said, I don't know if it's active termites or not. So I had somebody, pest control, come out and look at it. And they said, hey, it might be safe to get the bait stations if you want to have some peace of mind. And then, because they said that termites can do a lot of damage to your home, basically eat your house from the inside out. Now, talk about the different types of termites. Because as far as I remember, there's subterranean termites.
That's this area.
Okay, so we don't have drywood termites in this.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
it's normally
on the
subterranean.
West Coast.
Yeah, it's normally subterranean termites in this area. We have like carpenter bees and things of that nature, but it's normally subterranean termites, and they love moisture.
Okay.
So if you have an area that floods a lot, or if you see mold, then you could have termites.
Okay.
So it's really just controlling the water as far as the termites. That's really all you can do.
Okay.
But the telltale sign with termites is a dirt tube that's called a shelter tube, and that's how they travel.
Okay.
So if you see a lot of those tubes everywhere, or a lot of frass, which is like
That they're dropping.
yeah,
Okay.
not it's like wood pieces.
Oh, so wood,
You see a
okay.
lot of wood pieces or wings and things of that nature. That could be an indication that you have a termite issue.
Okay.
And that's why we use the like I said, the tool to kind of pry at things, because even if it looks solid, like I said, they eat from inside out. So it looks solid, but you could put your screwdriver straight through it. That's a sign of termites.
Wow.
So
And
what are your thoughts about home warranty?
If it's older systems, I always recommend home warranty.
okay.
Sometimes people think when you get a home warranty, they're gonna fix everything every time, or replace everything every time. They're gonna come out and try to fix it first.
Yeah.
If they can't fix it, they'll replace it.
They'll
But
put
they'll
a
keep
Band-Aid
trying to
on it
fix it.
first.
Yeah. So for a brand new house, I mean that's at your discretion. But definitely for like an older home, older system, older component, older roof, things like I would say, you should get a home warranty because you're closer to the end than not, and you're probably gonna need that warranty, more than like I said, a new construction.
So when you
property.
say older home, what age are you talking? Maybe
15, 20,
15 to 20.
if they have never changed the system.
Okay.
So we can go in old houses that's 50 years old and they change everything and they're perfectly fine. We're going to an old house that's 50 years old that they haven't changed anything.
Right.
That's a whole nother, conversation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Some of those older homes I've seen, they still have the original furnace.
Yeah.
the
And they're
boilers and stuff.
Yeah, the boilers,
Yeah,
and they're still churning.
Yeah.
What are you looking for on those older systems that maybe these newer systems have? Is the difference as far as how you approach those systems?
Not really.
Not really. Okay.
So I'm still looking for the same, the corrosion, the signs of corrosion, rust. We try to activate all the systems while we're there just to make sure it works. We're listening to how it kicks on, how it turns off, if there's loud fan noises, banging.
So tell us a story, like maybe of like the worst home you've ever been in. It's going to be a 2-part question, but like the one that had maybe the most problems.
Man, it's I hate to say it, but it's probably in Capitol Heights.
Okay.
They're known to have a higher water table.
Okay.
So I saw a lot of water intrusion from pretty much all sides. They had 3 sump pumps. 3 sump pumps. So normally homes in this area, older homes, they weren't built with sump pumps. So to see them have 1 sump pump and then 2 and then 3, they're saying that they put 1 in, see if it worked. That didn't work. They put another one in. That didn't work, so they put another one in.
Wow.
So either there was installation of it or they just couldn't figure out how to stop it. Behind the walls, they painted them, but it was like mold behind the walls. Small dots were visible on the surface. We had termites, of course, termites all over.
House should have been demolished.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think they got the house, but I think homes like that, they may be even too much for an investor.
Yeah.
So when homes are rehab or flip, that rehab homes that investors don't want to touch, most times a owner that's going to live in their own, it might be too much for them too.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the worst thing. It was coming from all angles. They couldn't really tell you where it was coming, where they couldn't figure it out.
Right.
3 sump pumps.
3 sump
Man,
pumps.
I can only imagine when all those turn on at the same time, the noise is being made.
Oh my gosh.
Turbine.
Right.
Right.
Have you ever been to a home where you kind of deemed it too dangerous to enter, or something, a situation where you felt like it could have been something dangerous for yourself, physically?
Well,
Like
sometimes
maybe being on a roof that wasn't the safest, or being in a crawl space, maybe where you saw maybe cracks in all the joists and.
Yeah. So my worst, I'll say, what's unsafe is if the door is wide open and it's a rundown home. Sometimes we still deal with squatters. There's still people inside. Like I've done an inspection where we did the whole basement, the whole main level, and went upstairs to the top level, and there's a guy laying in bed. like that was the wildest thing. And I was like, "Oh, we're here to do home inspection." He's like, "Oh," and he just walked up.
Oh,
I was like, we were here like talking.
he didn't act alarmed or anything.
No,
he just
walked up.
do what you got to do.
Yeah. I was like, we were having conversations. Like it was about 4 of us. It was the buyer, the agent, and me, and my helper, and we were talking. And they never said, we were like, "Hey, home inspection. We're here in the house." Never said anything.
And this is a squatter, though. This
I
is not
don't
the
know if it
homeowner,
was a squatter, but actually,
somebody living with the owner.
So I found out later that it was the owner's son.
Okay.
And I guess he didn't want to leave. The owner had left already, and he was still there.
Yeah.
So they had to eventually kick him out.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that it was the wildest thing, man. But after then, I had to get my concealed carry.
Right. Because I know certain areas you go into, specific areas, you're probably like, a little more vigilant of your surroundings.
Yeah.
Especially because you have your company branding on your vehicle. They know you got equipment, so I know you constantly basically looking over your shoulder in certain areas. Has there been any other situations where you kind of felt like you feared for your safety?
Well, yeah. So it's sometimes decks, man. Decks are tough sometimes.
Okay.
Especially if they have little to no maintenance and they're old. I know that's why I normally start outside first. I like to walk around and look underneath the deck before I walk.
See what you're getting yourself into.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've looked at the deck before and I was like, yep, I'm not getting on that one.
Okay. Okay.
And I didn't. So
you get on it, you can shake. It feel like it's starting to. You're like, oh no.
I saw a deck. I was like, man, if I get on this, it's gonna fall. Probably.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Wow. Was it the foundation or was the wood dry rotted or?
So normally most decks fail at the ledger board, like where it bonds to the house. So the attachment, sometimes I could see gaps or I could see like bolts pulling away, and or in this case, it was sagging quite significantly. So it just so the like you actually walk down and then up. So it's like
hold on, walk down.
Ramp.
It was like a ramp. So I was like, so that was obviously like collapsing. So that was probably the worst one I've seen.
Okay, and then also too, when I was purchasing a home, I've always heard about radon gas, but I didn't really know what it is. Tell the people basically what radon gas is, where it comes from, and also what is the safe level of radon gas in the home.
Oh, absolutely. So radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer. So it's present in all homes at various quantities. The EPA limit is 4.0. So it comes from the soil. As soil decomposes, the radon, it comes from radium. So it's uranium, radium, then radon, and the radon gas is what seeps into your house if you have cracks or openings in your foundation.
Okay.
It's normally worse if you have a basement. Because radon's, it's a relatively heavy gas, so it's not going to rise all the way to the top, but it's going to concentrate in the lower areas of your house at higher levels. So normally if we do a radon test, we test in the lowest lived in area. So the area that you're going to, if it's an unfinished basement, we're not as worried about it because you're not going to be living there. Okay. So if you have a finished basement, that's where we would test.
Okay.
So if you have a sump pump, or like I said, cracks or openings, that's going to be where where you want to test. Like Montgomery County is required in this area. They're required with every buy and sell to get a radon test because they're known to have elevated levels.
So they have the higher level.
So what happens if you have over that? You said 4.0 level. What can you do to remediate radon?
So it's a process called subslab depressurization. So you depressurize in the area underneath the concrete slab. So they'll install a pipe, like a PVC pipe, like almost looks like a drain pipe, and they'll install it. They'll cut a hole in the ground and they'll install the pipe. Okay. And they'll install a fan outside or above,
in the attic side of the houses. And
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just pulling the air underneath from underneath your house up and out before it comes in.
Okay.
So it's just depressurizing the air.
No matter what, if you don't have any cracks or anything, is radon gas still present no matter what in most basements?
Yeah.
Okay.
At various quantities.
Okay. There's really no way around it. It's just making sure that it's not above, like you said, 4.0.
Right. And it's outside. Like I said, it comes from the soil. So, it's probably 0.2, 0.5 outside. And that's the levels we would like to see inside. But like I said, sometimes, especially with how we build homes tight now, it doesn't allow the gas to escape. It has a short shelf life, so it plates out or it turns into a solid after a while. Especially if you use like fans and things like that. But just it's constantly producing as well.
Okay, what's the highest level of radon that you've seen?
I've seen 25 or 30. Yeah,
30.
Yeah, I think I've seen 30.
That was Montgomery County?
That was Montgomery County. That was Silver Spring. Yeah, that was Silver Spring. Yep, that was the highest one to see. Actually, Northwest DC, I've also seen 25.
Okay.
I saw 25 in Northwest DC, and it's actually kind of a sad situation. They opted not to get the radon test, because they were around that border. So there's like, oh, we're not Montgomery County, so we might not have it. They tested later, and it was ridiculous. Wow. So normally they fix about 1,500 to 2,000 or so to install that pipe. So they installed it, and it still didn't fix it. Really? So yeah, so with older homes, like DC homes, their concrete slabs are relatively thin. So with what's called undermining, so undermining is when water washes the soil below the slab away. So it wasn't. I think there were so many cracks and gaps in the slab that it couldn't create a good suction. So I think so they had to add like three different points to make sure they pull all the gases out, and then they eventually got it, but it took a little while. It took a little work.
A lot of money.
Yeah, a little work. Yeah, a little money. And that was after they moved in. They had small children, and they're actually going to use the basement area for, living room or, living.
And this goes back to the original point of why it's important to get a home inspection. You could have mitigate having these or even buying the house. You know, if you had the home inspection, you could came in and say, hey, your radon is 30, 30, was it 0.30 or something like that?
30.
30.0. 30.0. But now you skipped out on, you know, whatever the cost of it is. Now you probably had to spend, I don't know, $10,000 to get this fixed.
Right.
Wow.
What are some of are there any like early health signs of overexposure to radon?
No. So radon, like cancer, has a long latency period. So normally it takes 30 years to see any signs of cancer. So even with asbestos, you know, radon, and even lead, you know, to a smaller extent, well, you know, it causes cancer as well. But definitely, you know, asbestos and radon, they have about 30-year latency period.
Okay.
Do you do any type of lead testing in the water or pipes or anything like that?
We not as much. I haven't. We have. So there's lead swabs. So you can honestly buy them over the counter.
Okay.
So they're about $10.
Basically, test your own water.
You could test you could test it yourself. But like I said, asbestos and radon, those are the ones that it's best to have a professional test first, and then you can kind of do the maintenance on your own. With lead, like I said, it's paint. Yeah. Normally with lead. So if you see peeling paint in an old house, then you know you can swab it. You can see, but it's not gonna continue to come. You know, if lead's there, it's gonna be there until you take it out. You know?
When you see an older home that has lead paint, most of the time before that home is sold, they have to have all of that removed, I'm assuming.
Well, to an extent, it should be, but that's not always the case. And you know, lead is like more for like children that they'll eat the paint pieces, and it causes like pica, like you know, like a mental defect. So that's like the biggest thing with that. But even with like lead and asbestos, the problem is dust. So when it becomes a dust, you inhale it, that can cause like, you know, lung cancer and things of that nature. Like asbestosis is basically when you inhale, you know, asbestos fibers, and over time it kind of eats at your lung tissue.
So only if it's kind of disturbed, but if it's not disturbed, you're perfectly fine.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Yep. So if it's what's called friable, and that just means it can be ground into a powder with hand pressure. So if you can grab it and grind it, that's friable, and that's what you don't want with asbestos. And you know, like the square tiles, they 90% chance that, you know, it has asbestos, but honestly, the way they made the asbestos materials, they interwoven the fibers into the material. So all the material is going to have different quantities of asbestos. Okay. And you know, if it's not cracked or damaged, then I would just leave it alone.
And you said that's mostly in your tiles, your house.
Yeah.
The peeling sticks you're talking about, or regular tiles?
No, they're like 9x9 tiles, and that's from like the 80s and below.
Oh, okay.
So normally in the 90s, 2000s, we don't really see it.
Okay.
But in 1980s and below, we'll see like the tiles, or we'll see if they still have radiators, or they have a boiler and radiator systems. Normally they wrap the boiler pipes with insulation, and that insulation sometimes contains asbestos. So we'll see it there. We'll see it in like fireproofing. Asbestos was a great fireproofer. That's where, you know, that's why it became so popular, because it was cheap and it was good for you know, reducing fires and things. So it was a great insulator. But then we found, like, you know, if you held this stuff, you know, so the people that really got sick from asbestos were the miners, like the people that were actually making the stuff. Yeah. That's who had problems. Like, not as much for, you know, the consumers, but the people that are dealing large quantities with, that's who really had an issue.